Yeah, that's what I did. There it is. Okay, so a couple of things that came up from last time when we were talking about the cognitive theories, questions that people had. One of them was, what exactly is the difference between the theory and the empiricist theories? And this came up in the context of our explanation break and people trying to explain the difference between those two theories. So let me say something about that to begin with. So the idea behind the empiricist theories, the associationist or dynamic ones, is that all you ever have are the very specific concrete pieces of evidence you have at your senses. That's it. And all that happens with development is that you take those very specific experiences and you put them together to make more complicated combinations of those kinds of specific experiences. And the constructivist view, the theory view, is that you already start out, even from birth, with hypotheses about the world that are more abstract and more structured and different from just the actual things that you see about the world, the actual experiences you have. And then the experiences act as evidence for those more abstract hypotheses, and they let you switch from one abstract hypothesis to another abstract hypothesis the same way that you do in science. So for the empiricist, really, truly, all the way through development, you never really have abstract, structured representations of the world. All you ever really have are just combinations of your specific concrete experiences. And it's just that if you get a complicated enough bunch of specific experiences with complicated enough relationships between them, you can do a lot that looks as if you have this abstract, structured representation. Whereas the theory says you have that abstract, structured representation from the beginning. You're starting out with these abstract hypotheses, but then you're testing them and changing them depending. Part of why in the book they put theory and modularity in the same category, because both of them say that there's a lot there to begin with. They don't think there's blank slates the way that the empiricist theories think that there are blank slates. But one way I like to think about it is both the theory and the modularity core knowledge theory say that the mind isn't a blank slate, but the theory says it also isn't written in stone either. So it's kind of like the modularity view is it's not a blank slate, and what's written on those tablets is going to be there for all eternity. And the theory view is it's not a blank slate, there already are structures there to begin with, but you can erase and redo and revise and change those structures, so you might end up with something that doesn't look anything like what you started out with. Is that clear to everybody? And that's essentially the constructivist view as well. Okay? So that is one point, and then the other point was about the ages on my slides versus what's in the textbook. And the truth is those ages are pretty approximate anyway. So it's not as if there's a moment in 18 months when babies turn from being sensory motor to being pre-operational. The general picture is that there's a sort of period of infancy which is sort of somewhere between birth and somewhere in the second year when children start using language. And then there's a period that starts sort of somewhere in the second year and continues till somewhere around 4 or 5 when children start going to school. And then there's a period from there to adolescence. And those are, as you can see, those are pretty general terms. So, Augie, for instance, probably has 100 words and he's 15 months old. So that kind of is he still in the sensory motor period for Piaget? Well, it's kind of hard to tell because he has a lot of language and he has a lot of symbols. So those aren't, whenever we talk about ages, none of that is strict and fast in any of developmental psychology. It's always just a sort of general guide. Okay, any other questions about that? So today what I'm going to do is kind of go back. We went and talked about the theories, and now we're going to go back to thinking about those newborn babies that, the newborn babies that we were talking about, not last week, but the week before that. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the pragmatics of the newborn babies when we were talking about birth, about the way that babies sleep, and about the way that babies eat. What we're going to do today is start talking about what their world is like, what their cognitive abilities are like. And what I'm going to do is today I'm going to talk about newborns, so I'm going to talk about cognitive abilities in very, very, very little ones. And then next time I'm going to give some examples of how those abilities change during the course of infancy. So this is very relevant to this question about, is there a blank slate? What actually literally is there in, say, the first month of life? What can babies do? So one thing that we know that babies can do is that babies can see from the time they're born. Yeah? Oh, sorry. Not working, is it? I noticed that puzzled look on people's faces, but I didn't realize that it was a more straightforward puzzle than some content here. There it is. Okay, there we go. That's good. Okay, so that's Augie. In the olden days, there used to be, when I was born, for example, there was a kind of mythology that babies couldn't see when they were first born. And it turns out that that's not true at all. In fact, babies can see from the time they're born. But there are some interesting limitations to their vision when they're first born. And in particular, they have a very, very limited focal length. So most of us, if I'm looking around this room, I can either focus on things that are very close to me, like I could focus on that clock, or even without moving, well, do it this way, I could focus on that stool that's right in front of me, and even without moving my head, I could also focus on someone who's sitting in the back row. And we just take for granted the fact that we can focus at different lengths. But babies can't do that. So babies can only, for babies, the only things that are in sharp focus are things that are about 9 inches or so away from their faces. And of course, you can see why the mythology that they couldn't see very well started, because if you had a grown-up and you could only see things that were 9 inches away from your face and you couldn't see anything that was further away, you'd say, oh, that's someone who has really terrible vision. That's someone who's so nearsighted that they might qualify as being partially blind if you could only see things that were 9 inches away in sharp focus. But if you think about the world of the baby is quite a different world. And you think about what actually is about 9 to 12 inches away from the baby's face. Okay, any comments? Yeah. Exactly. So what you see about 9 inches away from you, if you're a baby, is the face of the person who's taking care of you and is holding you. And from the baby's perspective, especially a newborn baby, that's the most important thing in the world to see. So although it might look as if the baby's vision is limited, it's limited in ways that are actually probably really helpful for the baby, because it means that the baby can focus on the thing that's most important, which is the face of the mother. And the baby isn't being distracted by all the other things that are going on further away or closer in. And as babies develop, they start to develop broader focus, and they start to develop the ability to focus on things that are further away or closer to them. Another interesting thing about babies' vision is that it takes a little while before they have color vision. So initially, they don't really seem to be able to discriminate colors, but they're very, very good at discriminating black and white, and they're very good at discriminating contours. So they're very good at picking up on the edges of things. And if you look at a newborn baby, it can be sort of weird, because the baby will do something like a baby looking around this room might look up at the edge where the ceiling meets the wall and act as if, oh my God, that is so cool, that's so interesting. And you have, the beautiful, brightly colored mobile that you bought at great expense for the baby, and it's totally ignoring it, and the edge of the ceiling strikes them as being, fantastic, interesting, wonderful thing. And that's because the babies, by attending to those sharp edges, those are likely to be contours. They're likely to give babies information about objects. So they seem to be particularly interested in high contrast and contours and edges, rather than, say, in color. We also know something about, as I said before, if you think about those babies looking at things that are 9 inches away from their own face, what's that likely to be? It's likely to be somebody else's face. What do babies actually think about faces? What do they see when they look at faces? And that's been a kind of interesting argument in the literature, because it seems that babies recognize and prefer faces from the time they're born. So if you show them a face versus, say, a bullseye or a checkerboard early on, they'll move their heads over and look at faces. And again, if you've seen a newborn or a 1-month-old, they'll stare until they kind of catch somebody's face, and then they'll look for a really long time, and then they'll kind of move around, catch somebody else's face, and look at them for a long time. And in fact, you can show that the babies prefer faces to other kinds of stimuli. And within a few weeks, they actually prefer familiar faces to unfamiliar faces. So you can give the baby a little baby Nielsen rating where you show them, here's a picture of mama's face, and here's a picture of another woman's face, and within a few weeks, they'll prefer to look at mama's face over the other woman's face. But there's an interesting complication to this, which is one of the things that people discovered was that the babies also really like to look at scrambled faces, like that face in the middle. So if you show them the first picture versus the last picture, they'll prefer to look at the first picture, but they'll also prefer to look at the middle picture over the last picture initially when they're first born, which seems very kind of bizarre. And that's led to kind of a debate and an argument in literature about, well, is it that babies really prefer faces, or is it that babies really prefer things that have a lot of high contrast features in the middle of an oval, basically? And there's still some controversy about that. It turns out to be different if you're thinking about moving faces or if you're thinking about still faces. But I think the important methodological point is, of course, from the baby's perspective, are all the real faces. So if the baby's designed to just detect things with high contrast in an oval, then in practice, what that means is that they're going to be seeing a lot of faces. In the same way that the baby's just focusing on something 9 inches away, in practice means that they're going to be seeing a lot of faces. So a lot of times these debates that you have about how high level or low level the baby's cognition is, so you might say, well, wait a minute, do newborn babies understand about faces or do they not understand about faces? That's not really the right way of asking the question, because very often what we see is that babies will be attracted to things like movement or other signs of something being human. Whether you want to say that they really understand what it means to be human or not is kind of a moot point. So the important point is that the way that babies are designed cognitively, human faces are extremely important to them, and they're paying a lot of attention to human faces. How about hearing? Babies, this is a newborn baby actually getting a hearing test, and one of the very first things that they'll do with newborn babies is to try to see, either formally or informally, what their hearing is like. And from the time that the babies are born, from the time that the babies are born, babies can localize sounds. So, for example, the way they did the hearing test when my first baby was born in England was they took a teacup and a teaspoon, everything being about tea when you're having a baby in England, and then scraped the very first thing you do after you give birth is to have a good strong cup of tea. To this day, having a good strong cup of tea makes me feel like I've really accomplished something, even if it isn't actually giving birth. So they take the teacup and the teaspoon and then rub the spoon against the cup and then see if the baby would turn his head towards the cup. And even a newborn will actually turn their head in the direction of the sound if they've got good hearing. And that's interesting not only because it shows that the babies are hearing well, it also shows that babies are already mapping sounds and vision in a way. They're already thinking about sounds as telling you something about the spatial character of the world around them. So you might have thought that the way that you learn about space and things being in space, that has to rely on your visual sense or maybe your tactile sense. But in fact, babies can use hearing to localize objects in space as well. Yeah?
Babies see upside down visually, like inverted vision. Does that affect their cognitive functions, or is that just a myth?
That's just a myth. I don't think they, yeah. Well, it's tricky. Everybody sees upside down, right? So it's kind of funny. What actually happens is that the image that's actually on the retina for all of us is upside down. It's just that we get used to seeing it as if it's right side up. And there are these great experiments where you can put prisms on people so that that image is inverted once again so that, let's see, so now it's upside down from our perspective, but right side up from the retina's perspective. And it takes people a little while, but then after a while they say, oh yeah, that looks right side up too. So it's actually pretty tricky about what actually is upside down and what actually is right side up. Okay. Once again, we know that babies can recognize sounds at birth that they've heard in the womb. So these are experiments where they had mothers read Dr. Seuss stories to the babies, and then the babies, once they were born, preferred the sound of the stories that they heard as opposed to the sound of other stories. There's also some evidence, for instance, that babies are sensitive to the sounds of their particular language from the time they're born. So that newborn babies who have heard French-speaking babies, prefer to listen to French over English, even if they haven't actually heard any French or English after their birth. So you can test them just in the very, very, very soon after they're born. And presumably that's not because babies are born being French speakers or English speakers. It's because they've heard the sounds of French or the sounds of English while they were still in the womb. And we know that babies can hear things in a kind of muffled, distant way, but they can still hear sounds even when they're still in the womb. And they seem to get some information even from those sounds when they're still in the womb. Just as babies prefer human faces to other kinds of stimuli, babies prefer human voices to other kinds of sounds from the time they're born. And again, you can do this little baby Nielsen rating. The baby's lying in a crib, the voice is coming in at this ear, and then a complicated noise is coming in at this ear, and essentially from the time they're born, the babies will turn their heads to listen to the voice. And again, just as with faces, within a few weeks, the babies recognize and prefer a familiar voice. So now they'll turn to hear mama's voice as opposed to hearing some other woman's voice saying the same thing. So I think the big point is newborns are born very, very, very tuned into the other people who are going on around them. You might think that the story was that babies are born just sort of seeing the world as the great psychologist William James said, as this looming buzzy confusion, and then they have to do a lot of learning about people. They have to understand something quite complicated about people. But actually the story seems to be the other way around. It seems that babies are already born focusing on people, thinking that people are important, paying attention to people. That's something that they don't really seem to have to learn as a result of their experience. So that seems to be one of the things that's there from the very beginning. Okay, let's just have a brief explanation break. Just recapitulating this question about is it right or not to say that newborn babies are recognizing faces, and we'll do this for 3 minutes. Okay. So what's the arguments? Explain the arguments on either side about whether it's right or not to say that babies recognize faces. Okay, let's go on. So those of you who aren't sitting next to someone are losing out on the explanation break. So maybe that is immoral. That people should be friendly and cozy and cuddly and make sure that you sit down next to somebody or lean over anyway. Okay. How about taste and smell? So we tend, as adult cognitive psychologists, we tend to really emphasize hearing and vision kind of at the expense of our other senses. But we know that other senses are very important for other animals, and other senses seem to be extremely important for babies as well. So we know that even newborn babies already have taste preferences, just like they have preferences for certain kinds of sound and certain kinds of visual stimuli. In particular, and this will not surprise anyone, babies start out preferring things that are sweet to things that are sour and bitter. And in fact, mom's breast milk is actually much sweeter than just regular cow's milk. There was someone last year who started having breast milk ice cream that they were selling somewhere, and there was a big brouhaha about it. But from a strictly culinary point of view, there probably is something to be said for it because it has lots of sugar and lots of fat, and it would taste really good. Which is good for the babies. So babies already seem to be sensitive to taste, and again, that sensitivity, that preference for sweetness, is making them more likely to breastfeed. It's putting them in touch with mom. It's putting them in that particular social circumstance. And they also prefer some smells over others, vanilla versus shrimp, which somehow intuitively seems to make sense. So if you spray vanilla around, that seems to be the most primordial thing that people really like to smell. And in one of my favorite experiments, this is quite an old experiment, but it's still a favorite experiment of mine, the babies actually recognize the mother's smell in particular within a few weeks. So the way they did this experiment was they took the nursing pads the women wear when they're breastfeeding to soak up all the milk overflow, and they put a breast pad from the mother and the breast pad from another nursing mother on either side of the crib, and it turned out that within a few weeks the babies were turning their heads towards the mom's breast pad rather than turning their heads towards the other nursing mother's breast pad. So it wasn't just the smell of milk or nursing mother, it was particularly mommy's milk. And if you have a newborn around, one of the things that moms know is that the baby can be perfectly happy being held by daddy or being held by grandma or anyone else, but as soon as mom holds the baby, then the baby says, wait a minute, there's milk here, or I'm going to turn around and try to suckle. And the baby seems to be doing that by recognizing the very distinctive mommy smell. And once again, as with faces, as with voices, what that means is that babies are being very tuned into people, and in particular, babies are being tuned into the people who are most likely to actually take care of them. And it's worth mentioning that you don't get this effect with non-breastfeeding mothers. So there's many reasons, we talked about this a little before, there's many reasons why breastfeeding is good, but it turns out that breastfeeding actually isn't just a matter of nutrition for babies, it also is an interaction. The babies aren't just getting food from it, they're interacting with the mother and finding out things about the mother in the course of breastfeeding. And again, a somewhat underappreciated sense is the sense of touch. We don't think about that very much from the perspective of adulthood, but yet again, that's one of the most important senses for babies. And this is actually a picture of a baby in the NICU. This is a newborn, the neonatal intensive care unit. These are these newborn premature babies. And one of the really striking examples of a developmental discovery that actually made a difference is that it turned out that if you just had people put their hands through the holes in the crib of these very severely premature babies and just touch the babies, those babies gained weight more, they were less likely to get sick, they were more likely to survive. So just having that kind of laying on of hands, that physical contact, really was as important to those newborn babies as anything else was. And now they very much encourage mothers of premature babies, even though the babies kind of stuck with all these tubes and oxygen coming in, to come and actually be in contact with the baby because it seems to be so much better for the baby. And that also means that the babies are being sensitive to that kind of touch. So this is the example of even the preemies, even the premature babies, are being very sensitive to touch. And that's interesting also because, of course, it means that even before babies are born, they seem to be tuned into being sensitive to human touch, or at least before babies are mature and typically would be born. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that we know, that gets to the next point, which is that one of the things that we also know about babies, about newborns, and then babies say in the first 3 or 4 months of life, in fact, babies in the first year or 2 of life, is that they like being held. They like being in close contact with adults. And if you look in most cultures, for most of human history, babies spent most of their time in close physical contact with others. And one of the interesting arguments that people have made is that in our culture, we're actually very unusual because we do a lot of interacting with babies like this, where we'll hold the baby out and we'll say, oh, aren't you a sweet baby? Aren't you nice? Look at this, right? That's actually pretty unusual from a cultural perspective. Most of the time what's happening is the babies are in slings, or they're strapped onto a mom or the grandmother or the father or someone who's actually holding them tight, and they're kind of being held like this, so there isn't a lot of this kind of face-to-face interaction. And one of the things that people have argued sometimes is, well, maybe those babies aren't actually getting information about the mothers in the same way that Western babies who are being held like this actually are getting information from the mothers. Sorry, let me backtrack a little and I'll get back there. So hold that thought. What we do know is that holding and close contact are very important for babies' happiness. So we know that babies are happier if they're in close physical proximity to another person than when they're distant from the other person. Yeah?
I actually knew someone who had a premature daughter, and he went into the hospital, and she was in there for a long time. The baby liked skin contact,
right.
Where they would have him be there for like an hour and hold her,
right.
And he would be like, it would be bare skin,
right.
bare skin. And it was supposed to help her like gain weight and
yeah.
actually like touch things.
Yeah.
It does help.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with babies who are really premature and really in trouble, who they can't even take out of the NICU, then they'll have hands in. But of course, it's better if what you've got is a nice naked baby and a naked